It's rare President Barack Obama will be that angry black guy, but let's just say yesterday he was a little ticked off when he came out and spoke about comments by Donald Trump dealing with this whole issue of radical Islam. Here's a snippet of the president.
We now have proposals from the presumptive Republican nominee for president of the United States to bar all Muslims from emigrating to America. We hear language that singles out immigrants and suggests entire religious communities are complicit in violence. Where does this stop?
And when the president started jabbing his finger and got a lot more bass in his voice, he a little ticked off.
Yeah.
He was more what he had to say.
There's no magic to the phrase radical Islam. It's a political talking point. It's not a strategy. And the reason I am careful about how I describe this threat has nothing to do with political correctness and everything to do with actually defeating extremism. We've heard these suggestions during the course of this campaign. Do Republican officials actually agree with this? Enough talking about being tough on terrorism. Actually be tough on terrorism and stop making it easy as possible for terrorists to buy assault weapons. Reinstate the assault weapons ban. Make it harder for terrorists to use these weapons to kill us. Otherwise, despite extraordinary efforts across our government, by local law enforcement, by our intelligence agencies, by our military, despite all the sacrifices that folks make, these kinds of events are going to keep on happening.
Now, you knew Donald Trump couldn't stay quiet. He had to respond last night at a rally in Greensboro.
And I watched President Obama today, and he was more angry at me than he was at the shooter. And many people said that. One of the folks on television said, boy, has Trump gotten under his skin. But he was more angry, and a lot of people have said this, the level of anger, that's the kind of anger he should have for the shooter and these killers that shouldn't be here.
And why not? Hillary Clinton got in on the act, speaking at a campaign event in Pittsburgh.
Is Donald Trump suggesting that there are magic words that once uttered will stop terrorists from coming after us? But in this instance, Donald's words are especially nonsensical because the terrorist who carried out this attack wasn't born in Afghanistan, as Donald Trump said yesterday. He was born in Queens, New York, just like Donald was himself. He said a lot of false things, including about me. He said, I'll abolish the Second Amendment. Well, that's wrong. He said, I'll let a flood of refugees into our country without any screening. That's also wrong. These are demonstrably lies. But he feels compelled to tell them because he has to distract us from the fact he has nothing substantive to say for himself.
Y'all been waiting.
I'm from Queens. I grew up a mile away from Donald Trump. And my father, a great man from Queens, bless his heart, bless his soul, would call him a blowhard. Archie Bunker was from Queens. Tony Bennett was from Queens. But however, this guy, this blowhard, this gas bag, hot air merchant, whatever you want to call him, will be having, and we talk about rootin' tootin' Putin, he will be having a private conference or meeting with Director of National Intelligence Clapper very soon, and he will be up there learning about our national intelligence, and he's being tapped by the DNC for his opposition research and all this stuff. This is very complex stuff, and we are trusting him with our national security. We may want. It's up to the voters.
I got to tell you, I'm from the Bronx.
Hey.
That passive-aggressive, right, the Bronx, that passive-aggressive thing that the president did, while he's, of course, factually right, doesn't really work as well as Elizabeth Warren's approach, which is direct strike. And that's how you have to handle Donald Trump.
Well,
there can't be any nonsense and fooling around.
I'm from Brooklyn.
All right, almost Staten
We're
Island
not
and
over the
Manhattan.
Dodgers leaving
What the
yet.
hell are we missing? What,
Staten Island, Manhattan.
yeah, Staten Island and Manhattan. Only two or three boroughs missing.
I got you all right here on the end.
Harlem, yeah.
I guarantee I got you all covered. I am a Kenyan-born Muslim. Unlike the president, I really actually am. I was born in Nairobi.
I love
and I will say this, that we really just have to get to the topic at hand. Donald Trump, in this veil of simplicity that he attempts to put over everything, misses the point that there's a real benefit to what you do and what many of us do on TV, and that is deconstruct things so that people can understand the terms of reference. Simplifying is not the same as being simplistic, which is what Donald Trump is doing. There are complexities here. We get that there was a bad guy who did something. We're not quite sure whether he was mentally ill, whether he was sexually confused. We're not sure what it was. We understand that he comes from a family where his father believes maybe he was the president of Afghanistan, and there might have been some delusional stuff. We understand that he liked to drink and he couldn't do that in his house. There are a lot of layers to this, and Donald Trump continues to try and go to the lowest common denominator and figure it out, and it gets us nowhere.
Let me say this really quickly. I never thought this could happen, but Donald Trump has made me agree not only with President Obama, but with Elizabeth Warren. I don't know where to go. I need a home.
Donald Trump talks about restricting immigration into this country from certain regions of the world because people aren't vetted. Jimmy Carter did the exact same thing. And in fact, Jimmy Carter expelled students who were already
From
here
Iran.
in the country during that crisis. So what is Donald Trump saying that is any different than what Jimmy Carter did?
It is. I agree. It is red meat to the people who follow him, that are angry, that feel disenfranchised. I just came back from Belgium, France, and the UK, and there is barbed wire and concertina wire right along the border into Calais, where they go underneath the channel to get into London, and they are very, very upset with the migrants coming up from Syria. That's a whole other problem. And they're really upset with Trump. They say to me, JC, is it true? Can Trump really be the next president?
But the point is, Democrats are vilifying. Now, I'm not a Trump delegate. I'm not a Trump supporter. You know, you want that. Call Katrina Pearson. But what Donald Trump
No, she won't come on this show. She'll do everybody else's show, but Katrina won't bring her butt on this show.
But Democrats are vilifying Donald Trump for saying we need to put a moratorium on immigration when it's the same thing that Jimmy Carter did, and he expelled students, which is something Donald Trump
It's not at all the same thing. Those were Iranian, I don't think it was right then, but those were Iranian nationals in support of the Iranian government. These are refugees from their state. They are against their government. They are victims of their own government and non-state actors. Entirely different things.
But it is known that there are embedded in
these
refugees. But it's known that there are embedded in these refugees, and he's saying we need to come up with a system to vet them so that we won't have terrorists coming in. So there's no difference.
Japanese people, what's different about that? It was wrong then too. It was wrong what Jimmy Carter did, but they are not the same things. These are refugees. These are the least.
Some are refugees and some are embedded terrorists within the refugees. And he's saying we need to figure out who is who.
Statistically inaccurate to say that. You have no evidence to suggest that whatsoever. Canada has taken in 25,000 of these refugees. 10,000 to start with. You just don't have evidence for that.
John Christopher.
This is a question of scapegoating. We've seen it in Europe in the 30s. We've read about it. Who haven't been there, I wasn't there. And I see it again in Europe. The way the parties are going, the elections, the Brexit issue. The Brexit issue is about finance, Ali, as you know, but it's also a very emotional, and it's about immigration. I was with a London cab driver, and he said, soon, mate, my city's already been taken over by a Muslim, by Sadiq Khan, is now the new mayor, elected by a very strong get-out-the-vote operation by British Pakistan citizens.
It may be more
and they are afraid that they are going to take
Rich,
over their country. There's a fear, and it's called scapegoating, and Trump plays right into that.
And Rich and Lauren, I want to go both of you on this. Look, we saw this in the 80s and the 90s when we had the economic crisis in California, when they passed the proposition. When America when white folks in America start freaking out economically, it turns into a blame game.
Mm-hmm.
What Donald Trump is doing with these attacks in terms of immigration, at some point, though, folks have to accept the reality that you cannot try to blame a changing economic situation in America somehow on just, quote, illegal immigrants, because it's not like folks are trying to go run out there and go pick some lettuce or actually go clean some bathrooms in hotels. And it's for the people out there who are in Mississippi and Arkansas and South Carolina, they're like, yeah, and you're going,
well, see,
it ain't flying, richer than Lauren.
Well, the issue, I think the issue shouldn't be who's coming in. The issue should be the jobs that are going out. And when you, I mean, all the things you described are true. You have to do those locally. But when you look at what's going on in the Southeast with all those textile jobs, when you look at the Midwest with all those heavy manufacturing jobs, that's the real issue that we ought to be focused on. How do we keep those jobs from leaving rather than worrying about who's coming in?
And Lauren and Allie, it's a little hard to have a conversation with a guy who has clothes made in China, who then says, well, they change and manipulate the currency. That's why I'm doing it. No, he could have had to say it, make my stuff in America, but he wanted to still make as much money as he wanted to.
Yeah, the problem is, though, Trump, in some of what he says, there's a kernel of truth, right? This president has spent a lot of time focused on immigration and bringing more people in and not really talking a lot about what's going on here in the United States with regard to 45 million people in poverty, a word the president never says. And so when Donald Trump talks about trade, when Donald Trump talks about focusing on Americans, right, that is something that a lot of people respond to. He's too stupid, unfortunately, too narcissistic to keep with that message. If he kept with that message, he actually might win. But it resonates well.
There's a population in America of 55-year-old men, roughly, who were 40 when Bush 1 came in. And they have seen their income, adjusted for inflation, go down, and they have no movement in their favor. There's no movement like there is for transgender
largely
use of
white
bathroom.
Men.
Largely white men.
Because 55-year-old black men, they used to being broke.
Right, but fair enough. But 55-year-old white men are used to having an increase that is greater than the rate of inflation. Their rate of suicide, as you know now, is higher than it's been in modern history. Like it or not, agree with it or not, Donald Trump has his largest group of support in that demographic, and they have a movement. This is the Black Lives Matter version of middle-aged white men's lives matter. They have
that white poor demographic is the demographic no one talks to in American politics.
And he's talking
and
to
you know,
them.
Paul Ryan goes to Anacostia for poverty. He could go to his own district.
That's it.
Right?
That's right. And
so
that is very telling.
Republican politicians never
These
address
men
that.
have done poorly under a white president and a black president.
But here's the deal, though. Those same white men are going to have to look into the mirror because who have they been voting for the last 20, 30 years, and then have to ask themselves the question, wait a minute, what the heck was I doing? So now
on guns and abortion.
Huh?
They're getting them on guns.
And that's what Howard Dean said in 2004. If you focus on God, gays, and guns, you're taking them off of economics. Final comment, real quick.
And these guys cannot believe that a black man was elected president under their nose, and he did it 2 times. And they are really upset. And a lot of that is very racially motivated.
Speaking of a black man, coming up next, what is America's fascination with O.J. Simpson? How is he the poster child of race in America? Y'all, let's deal with this with our panel next on News 19 TV1.